are so excited, Raven.
We are! Congratulations! Let's go! We are so excited.
I'm ready to win. And
Yeah.
we're doing it.
Bring that,
Amen.
That's
That's
right. Ways. Yeah, we're beyond excited to have you. You have been at the top of our board through this whole process. So the fact that we got the opportunity to draft you and bring you to Indiana, to put you on this team, you bring something so special. You make us so strong in the backcourt. Just super pumped to get you here.
And you look great!
Yeah, good outfit. We talked about.
Just look at their reaction. You've got three executives laughing and acting like teenagers who just got invited to the cool table at lunch. That's the Indiana Fever front office GM Amber Cox, team president Kelly Krakoff, and head coach Stephanie White calling Raven Johnson after selecting her 10th overall. And honestly, that moment says a lot about where this franchise is right now. While other WNBA teams are focused on building real contenders, Indiana used a lottery pick on a point guard who struggles to shoot. To add to a position where they already have the best player in the league and a solid backup they just re-signed. Even Johnson herself didn't expect to go that high. So you have to ask, what exactly is the plan here?
Can back up the backup. Sounds good. Let's do that. They might as well get Kennedy Carter at this. That's what I'm saying. Might as well bring me Kennedy Carter. Fuck it. She can at least put the ball in the hoop. Here's Fever head coach Stephanie White on former South Carolina star Raven Johnson. First and foremost, she's a winner. She's won at every level.
First and foremost, she's a winner. Everything that she's won at every level.
And there it is again, Stephanie White bringing up the idea of using Caitlyn Clark off the ball. It's November 2024, and we're hearing the same themes that caused problems all last season. To guard lineups, versatility, playing on and off the ball, these sound nice. But they suggest a fundamental misunderstanding of what makes Clark special. Let's be clear, Clark just finished a rookie year where she led the league in assists, set the all-time single-season record, and carried a struggling Fever team into the playoffs for the first time in nearly a decade. The pattern is obvious: when the offense runs through her, the team succeeds. When they try to get creative and move her off the ball, things fall apart. It's not complicated.
She's won at every level.
First and foremost, she's a winner. Everything that she's won at every level.
Folks, in college basketball, the way recruiting is set up, you only need to go to one of 3 colleges and you're going to be considered a winner. Yeah, really, you only need to go to one of a select amount of schools and you're going to be considered a winner. Especially with the super seniors these days, you spend 6 years in college, you're going to be a winner one of those years. Going to some of these blue bloods and women's basketball. Shit almighty. Shit almighty.
Set the tone at every level.
White even called Dawn Staley the greatest point guard ever. Not Sue Bird, not Diana Taurasi, not even herself. Dawn Staley, who hasn't played professionally in nearly 2 decades. That comment is telling. It sounds less like analysis and more like justification by association. The logic seems to be, Raven Johnson played under a legendary coach, so she must be ready for the WNBA. But that's not real evaluation, that's leaning on reputation instead of fit. And if we're talking about her college resume, let's be honest. Johnson scored a combined 5 points across her last 2 national championship games, 5, in the biggest moments of her career, surrounded by elite talent. That was her output. Yet somehow, she's being framed as immediately pro.
Huh?
We're in the top 2 for sure, and she's experienced in big time moments, and so really excited.
Experience in big time moments, the moments that she scored 5 points. I effing hate this B. Experience in big time moments. She made 3 buckets.
Now we get to the real issue. They're talking about this pick as a way to give Kelsey Mitchell rest. But Mitchell just signed a $1.4 million Supermax deal, one of the biggest contracts in the league. And now, in the same breath, they're discussing limiting her minutes. That's a contradiction. You don't invest that kind of money in someone just to manage their workload. You pay that level of salary to players you rely on heavily, especially in big moments. Either Mitchell is a cornerstone who should be on the court as much as possible, or she isn't. And if she isn't, then why commit that kind of money in the first place?
But I think it helps because Ty is a player who's a combo who can play on and off the ball. Caitlyn is a player who can play on and off the ball. Raven is a point guard that primarily has had the ball in her hands, and so I think it gives us some versatility. Thankfully, having a couple of different guards gives us the ability to allow Kelsey to rest a little bit.
We just paid her $1.4 million and we're talking about rest. You gotta be shitting me. And y'all know I love Kelsey, but if we're paying her 1.4 for her to rest, what the fuck are we doing here?
So, I think we'll have a pretty good...
Let's look at Johnson as a player. Over her college career, she shot 32% from 3. To put that in perspective, that's below what you'd expect from many centers in today's WNBA. Her strengths are on defense, particularly guarding the ball, but offensively, she's limited. The problem is, Indiana already has pieces for both ends of the floor. They've got defensive players like Fagbinal and Nalissa Smith, and offensive firepower with Clark and Mitchell. What they really needed was size on the wing, shooting, and versatility. Instead, they added another undersized guard, someone who overlaps with skills they already have, while leaving their biggest gaps unaddressed. And it gets worse. Amber Cox openly said they believed Johnson could go in the top 4 or 5. That suggests they were even willing to trade up for her, for a player who didn't expect to be picked that high herself. That's not just questionable, it points to serious issues in how they're evaluating talent.
Pardon my French. Let's go with Amber Cox being an idiot.
I think because she has, won at the highest level, played on the biggest stage, obviously been to multiple Final Fours. I always say, like a point guard playing for a coach like Dawn Staley, who was one of the greatest point guards in our game, you're going to learn a lot, and she's been a sponge.
Folks, how do we see this, man? How do we see this? Anybody that wears those glasses, like that type of glasses, we should have known from the jump.
This is where things start to feel personal. Listen closely, and you'll notice Stephanie White keeps referencing Connecticut, mentioning players she coached there. Talking about familiarity. It starts to sound less like building a team for Indiana, and more like trying to recreate what she had with the Sun. The schemes, the rotations, the overall philosophy, it all mirrors Connecticut. But here's the problem. She doesn't have that roster anymore. She has Caitlyn Clark, a completely different type of player. Clark is at her best when the offense runs through her. She needs the ball. She creates everything. Connecticut's system, on the other hand, is built on shared responsibilities and defensive balance. Those two approaches don't naturally fit together. And instead of adjusting to her star player, White seems determined to force Clark into a system that limits her strengths. That's a major coaching misstep.
Appearance. Is she in hiding? Wait, is this interview from tonight or 3 days ago when she brought in Ty Harris? Messy and complicated choice. Needed some height and length. Everything she says is theoretical. No clue. Fever have no scouts. This is diabolical, man. This is diabolical. And listen to this. Amber Cox. Raven is somebody that we thought would probably go in the top 4 or 5. Raven is somebody they thought would probably go in the top 4 or 5.
There's also a bigger pattern forming. Kelly Krakoff joined as team president in May 2024. Amber Cox became GM in October. Stephanie White took over as head coach in November. What's the common thread? All of them arrived after Caitlyn Clark was already in place. None of them were there during the losing years. They came in once the spotlight and opportunity were already established. And now, they're making decisions that don't necessarily help Clark succeed, while presenting themselves as the smartest people in the room. That's what frustrates fans the most. These are not inexperienced people. They know basketball, which makes it even more concerning that they're choosing a system-first approach instead of maximizing a generational talent. At some point, it starts to look like ego getting in the way of what
she thought she'd be a lower pick. Raven Johnson herself said she thought she'd be a lower pick. Let's take a look at this real quick.
I did not think I was gonna get my name card. I'm be honest. I was like, oh, all these cameras coming in my face. But when they called my name, I was like, me? I thought I would have been a lower pick.
So what does this pick actually tell us? Indiana had the 10th selection in a draft with real talent still available. Dominique Malonga went shortly after and would have helped with size and rebounding. Shea Gonzalez offered scoring, something the bench needs. Instead, they chose a player who realistically projects as a depth guard. Even in a best-case scenario, she's not cracking the main rotation ahead of Clark or others already in place. That means your lottery pick is essentially backup insurance at a position where you're already covered. Meanwhile, other teams use their picks to fill clear needs. Minnesota added production. Seattle picked someone who fits their identity. Indiana, on the other hand, didn't follow a clear plan. It felt more like a decision based on preference than strategy.
The Indiana Fever front office is a disaster. Herb Simon, you gotta do something. Herb Simon's son, whoever in the Simon family is in control, you have to do something, because this is getting ridiculous. Now we have Stephanie White, Amber Cox, Kelly Krakoff calling Raven Johnson to let her know she's gonna get drafted, giggling like a bunch of little girls whose best friend just got to the playground. Ooh, I'm so happy you're here. Hee hee hee. Disgusting. Stephanie White talking about what a winner Raven Johnson is. A winner. Oh, what'd she score? 5 points in the last.
This is really where the bigger issue shows itself. The Fever's front office isn't operating with the mindset of a serious, title-chasing organization. It feels more like they're building a circle of players they personally enjoy or feel comfortable with. They're leaning toward familiarity and preference instead of making the tougher, more objective decisions that winning teams have to make. If you look at how successful franchises operate, it's pretty straightforward. They figure out who their best player is, and then they shape everything around that person. Every roster move, every system choice, every rotation, it's all designed to bring out the absolute best in that centerpiece. You can see that clearly across the league. Las Vegas built everything around A'ja Wilson. New York structured their team to maximize Breanna Stewart and Sabrina Ionescu. Minnesota has done the same with Nafisa Collier. There's a clear identity and purpose behind every move those teams make. Indiana, on the other hand, has Caitlyn Clark, a generational talent and arguably the most influential player in women's basketball right now. She's not just producing on the court, she's changing the business side of the league, driving attention, ticket sales, and overall growth. And yet, instead of leaning fully into what makes her special, the organization is making decisions that reduce her control of the game. Taking the ball out of her hands isn't just a tactical choice, it undercuts what makes her elite. That's what makes this situation risky moving forward. Yes, Clark is under contract through 2028, but that doesn't guarantee anything long-term. The WNBA landscape is evolving. Players have more freedom, more influence, and more options than ever before. And Clark, in particular, has leverage that goes beyond basketball because of her impact on the league as a whole. Right now, she's handling everything the right way. She's staying composed publicly, saying the right things, and working within the structure she's been given. But if you pay attention, you can tell she's aware of what's happening. The way she answers questions, the way she carries herself, it's clear she sees the same issues everyone else does. And if you're assuming she'd just stay no matter what, that's a risky bet. Players of her caliber don't spend their prime years in situations that aren't built to win. The timeline is shorter than people think, and every questionable decision chips away at that window. Think about the message this particular draft pick sends. You already have Clark running the point. You've invested heavily in Kelsey Mitchell as a scoring guard. You have obvious needs in the front court: size, length, versatility. And with all of that on the table, you use a first-round pick on another guard who doesn't address those gaps. That says a lot about priorities. It suggests that Clark's strengths and perspective aren't really driving decisions here. Instead, the organization is sticking to its own blueprint and expecting her to adjust around it. That's backwards. When you have a player like that, the system is supposed to adapt to her, not the other way around. Even the draft call itself reflects that mindset. The excitement, the laughter, the emphasis on her college background and coaching pedigree. It wasn't about how this pick helps Clark or fixes roster weaknesses. It felt more like they were celebrating landing someone they personally liked. That might work in a casual setting, but at the professional level, especially with championship goals, that approach falls short. Look at how well-run teams operate. Connecticut, for example, built around a clear core: Alyssa Thomas, Duana Bonner, Breonna Jones, and added players who filled specific roles within that structure. The Aces surrounded A'ja Wilson with exactly the right mix of shooting, defense, and playmaking to elevate her dominance. Every move had intention behind it. So what's Indiana's direction? Based on this move and the explanations that followed, it seems like the plan is to install Stephanie White's preferred system and hope Clark's talent is enough to make it work. That's not a real strategy. That's betting on individual brilliance to cover structural flaws, and this isn't an isolated situation. It follows a pattern. Last season brought questionable rotations, schemes that didn't fit the roster, and constant talk about moving Clark off the ball. Now there's a new coach, a new GM, a new president, but the same ideas keep showing up. That points to a deeper, organizational issue rather than a one-off mistake. Fans in Indiana have stuck with this team through difficult years. They deserve a front office that's fully committed to building a winner. Clark deserves a system and roster designed to maximize what she does best. Right now, it doesn't look like that's happening. As for this pick, the best case outcome is that Raven Johnson becomes a useful rotation player, and the decision ends up being more inefficient than damaging. The worst case? She doesn't pan out, and the team misses out on adding a player who could have filled a real need. But the bigger concern isn't just about one player, it's about the thinking behind the move. Because based on what we've seen, the focus doesn't appear to be on building a championship-level team. It looks more like an effort to validate a particular philosophy. And that's not enough. Not with a player like Caitlyn Clark, not with the level of fan support this team is getting. And not for a franchise that has a real opportunity to turn into a contender if it makes the right choices. Time matters here. The window to build something special around Clark won't stay open forever. And decisions like this one bring that reality a little closer. At some point, if things don't change, she have options and she take them, because players at that level don't stay in situations that don't prioritize winning. And if the Fever aren't careful, they're heading toward that outcome faster than they realize.